Hey Vineyard, we are in this Christmas season and our theme over it is When Jesus Entered My World. And in the sermon series that we're doing, we're considering that, what happened when Jesus entered the worlds of Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and later Simeon and Anna. And I want to invite you as well to consider your own story and get ready to share your testimony. What happened when Jesus entered my world? Share that with others in the church and share that with people that do not go to church, that do not know Jesus yet, but need to hear your personal testimony, your story. I mean, we're living in a world where everything is questioned, but no one can question your story. And so you've got a story to share. God has been creating a story in you through your lives. There's a God story on your life, and I want to invite you to get ready to share that. And so in this month we're also recording 3 interview testimonies with people from our church, where I ask them to share their stories with all of us. And so the first recording is with Stuart, who is quite a new member of our church, only since a couple of months, and God has in a beautiful way entered his world, and we're now gonna switch to the interview with him, where he shares a few more of the details of what happened. So hey Stuart, thanks for agreeing to this interview. How would you finish this sentence, when Jesus entered my world? What happened?
When Jesus entered my world, I guess everything changed is maybe the simplest way of putting it.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Yeah.
Everything changed. Your whole life changed.
Well, yeah, in essence, I think coming to faith challenged a lot of what I believed about the world, and in that same way, I responded to that challenge by allowing God to reshape my life.
Yeah. So there's definitely a before Christ and after Christ.
Yeah.
Stuart.
Yeah, I think so.
When did this change then? What happened?
I think in my early and mid-20s I began to meet more and more Christians who lived out their faith in their life, and they were also young professionals like myself, and they didn't seem particularly strange or weird. And meeting those people really helped soften my heart to the idea that faith might be a more normal thing.
Right. So the first sort of draw into Christianity interest was sparked by just Christians being loving, really living out the character of Jesus to you.
Yeah, just nice people who clearly believed what they believed. So I had quite a good job, and I was relatively well paid. I did a lot of travel. I would go out drinking with my friends and go to expensive restaurants and do all these things that look really good on an Instagram feed, and and all that kind of stuff, and nothing ever. There's a kind of weird gnawing sensation, like something isn't quite right. And I think there's also a kind of oppression that comes with being with not believing in God, where you're your own moral maker in a way. I put out a question on my Facebook, kind of, where do people get their morals from? And a lot of people responded saying, hey, I was raised Catholic, or I was raised this, that, the other, but I don't believe in it anymore. And I thought it was so interesting that so many people would still look to their morals from a Christian base. I think that helped me as well to kind of say, okay, maybe there is more here. I saw myself as someone who was trying to do good things and wasn't such a bad person, but still I felt like something wasn't right. And also there is this thing, if all of existence is just a random chance thing that happened, there is actually, and there's no greater purpose, there's no greater meaning, then there is no reason why you shouldn't be the most selfish person in the world. There is no reason why you should hold yourself to any moral standard. And I was willing to contemplate those things, and it doesn't give you much hope I think.
Yeah.
You know, to talk, I guess, about
Wow.
Advent and this thing, it can leave you in quite a hopeless place if you feel like, there's no real point to it all.
Your pull into Christianity was quite intellectual, from a very intellectual standpoint. So can you take us a little bit more to what sort of brought you in, sort of what convinced you in the end?
Yeah, I remember really distinctly one day. It was early January, and I wasn't feeling so great. And I went to work, and I had this feeling like, oh, I need to get something for lunch, and I ended up going to get fried chicken for lunch, which is one of my favorite things. But but as I sat there and kind of was eating my lunch, I thought, like, I can't keep living in the way that I am. Which, what I really mean by that and meant by that, I guess, is that I knew there was like better choices for me, and I always wasn't making them. It sounds ridiculous, but I mean, I really felt some kind of change, and yeah, from that day on, there was a few days there where things that I'd been struggling with for a really long time, they suddenly seemed to just disappear. I was living in Berlin, and I went for lunch on the Monday or something, and then I think on the Thursday I was in Madrid, and I was listening to one of these sermons on the subway system in Madrid, and I remember finishing the sermon and thinking, it's so weird they always talk about God as a father.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like that. I feel like the Holy Spirit was already part of my life in that moment, and I experienced the kind of question of, like, why is that? And I have quite a complicated, like a lot of people, I have a complicated relationship with my father. My parents divorced at a very young age, and I think I'd realized that I believed I didn't really need a father figure, and that's why I didn't like pastors and priests talking about God as a father. I would use the word trust, like trust that God could be real, rather than I think that's the words I would use. So I experienced more of like a conversion experience by the Spirit and not by people.
Yeah. On the subway in Madrid.
Yeah. and almost immediately I began to like experience hearing the voice of God in my life. Like we would describe it, like a still, quiet voice. Things that I couldn't have thought of myself.
So your journey towards Christianity was very gradual in that sense. It took a long time, of many years, intellectual, exploring, hearing, testing. But then your actual conversion was somewhat radical.
Yeah.
It changed everything around.
Yeah, I think so.
Because how long after did you end up at a YWAM course?
I'd always felt like I wanted to go to America. I always felt like that might be a place for me, and I really feel like God had been for years lining it up for me to go there somehow. And I at the time I was working for a company that had an office in the US, and I reached out to them and said, hey, could I come and work in the US? And everyone thought they would say yes, myself included, and they said no. But I really felt like convicted and motivated as well, that I needed to make that change. So I left I put in my notice to leave my job and planned to move to the States, not knowing what I would do or where I would be, just knowing that was it. And I traveled in the US a bit, and I always liked the northeast. And so I thought, maybe I'll move to Boston, and I had a few friends who'd done YWAM, Youth with a Mission, and I came across the Boston YWAM website one time, and I was really resistant to the idea of doing one of these like training courses. I realized it would take a lot of money, it would take time out of my life, it would possibly be kind of weird. It's kind of weird to be at my age. I'm 31 now. At the time I was 30, 29, 30, to do something like that. But I found this website and I felt a lot of peace about it, and decided, okay, I think this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, within a year of becoming a Christian, I had like left my then home for like several years, left my job and moved to a place I'd never been. To live in a dorm with like 15 other like 20-year-old guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And taking a very deep dive into discipleship, into the Bible, into living with God.
I often say to people that I think the idea to believe in God is quite a ridiculous idea. Like, it's such a strong idea. People take it so casually, but it's such a strong idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me to not see change.
Yeah.
If I'm going to believe in God, I have to understand who He is and know what that means for my life. Like, I wasn't really willing to half-heartedly do that.
So just bringing this to a close, your testimony. What would you say is the biggest difference in the before Christ Stuart and the after Christ Stuart? What are some things that have changed inside of you? What have you found?
I think it really starts maybe from a place of feeling approved of by God. Like, if I feel, having felt and knowing that I'm approved of by God, I have a lot less fear of man, which is a kind of Christian term, but like, I'm not so worried about what other people think of me. And that's enabled me to be more vulnerable with other people. It's enabled me to be more straightforward and direct. And it's also just given me a sense of security that I don't think I really had before. So I think really it's I think in the harder moments of life, I feel more secure and more mentally and emotionally stable than I did before. And I feel I think some specific noticeable differences is like I think a lot of people who know me now, they're seeing me as quite an encouraging person, like encouraging is probably the best word, and I never was that person before, and someone pointed that out to me, and I prayed to be more encouraging, and now I think it is a big part of who I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was such a inspiring thing to hear how you went from a complete non-Christian to a radical follower of Jesus now, and how that happened, what happened, and I think there's so many things that we can all learn from that. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
All right.